Despite a loyal audience, by January of 1956, it was clear that yours truly, Johnny Dollar, was failing to attract any kind of national sponsorship. The road to would have been difficult. Airing at 8:15 p.m. weeknights on CBS Radio, it was up against CBS's own TV schedule, with Burns and Allen broadcast Monday at 8, The Phil Silvers Show on Tuesdays, Arthur Godfrey on Wednesdays, The Bob Cummings Show on Thursdays, and Mama on Fridays. The serial format was great for character development, but it also meant audiences needed to tune into all 5 parts and know exactly what was going on.
From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
Hi, baby. Dan Mapes. Glad they gave you a telephone in your room.
Yeah, that's the only thing good about it.
Well, hospitals are designed to make a man impatient. You're a pretty lucky fella at that. Let me tell you about your operation.
Yeah, please do.
You stopped 2 slugs. They pried one out of your neck and another one out of your rib cage. Missed your heart by a snake's whisker.
I was luckier than Gloria Tierney.
Yeah. Yes, you were. I'm on my way up to see you. Don't run out on me.
Oh, fat chance.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to 4-State Insurance Company, Wilmington, Delaware. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Todd matter. Expense account item 11, $3.05, breakfast. I got mad at the nurse when she brought in a bowl of hot cereal and a glass of milk. So I bribed an orderly to slip across the street and get me a tray of bacon and eggs. I was just finishing same when up came Sergeant Mapes. He looked haggard and tired and worried.
You nearly got it for good, baby.
I got enough of it.
You sure did. What do you remember, if anything?
Well, we tailed Melva Charles to an apartment house. We stepped inside, and somebody began trying to kill me, and that's when I left town.
Yeah, it was quite a mess. Coroner had a real job in his hands.
Yeah. Hey, how about you?
Not a scratch.
Coroner, did you say?
Yeah, Melva Charles got it. Her husband stuffed a butcher knife in her back.
Oh.
That was for trying to sell him out to you.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe he thought he was worth more than $2,500.
Maybe. A man named Henderson, who happened to be walking down the hall at the wrong minute, took 3 in the head. He was dead before he hit the floor. Woman on the street got hit, not too bad. 2 people outside, just getting into a car, got cut up pretty bad when bullets smashed their windshield. You keeping track of all this?
I'm trying to. This all happened after we got there, huh?
Yeah. You see, when you and I walked in there, William Charles had just finished killing his wife. He saw us and began pumping. You got hit, and I pumped back at him.
You get him?
Yeah, but not till he had shot up everybody else. He's on the floor above you, hanging on by a hair. He knew his ticket was up, and he just didn't care. It's my fault you're here, baby. I'd have rather cut off my arm than get you in on this.
What do you mean?
I'll tagging you and going after her. I didn't use my head.
You know what?
What?
I still think you're a pretty good copper, Mapes.
Thanks, Johnny. Here, I brought you a book of poetry.
Poetry?
Read. Take it easy. We'll be talking again soon.
I felt awful. Sergeant Mapes dropped in later that afternoon, but I was half asleep. Vaguely, I remember they wheelchaired me down the hall for x-rays and lab tests. Expense account item 12, 10 cents, the morning paper. The story of the shooting was splashed all over page 1, and the solution to the Gloria Tierney killing in part. Slugs from William Charles' gun were matched with those that had killed Gloria Tierney. No mention was made of any loot from the Todd burglary being found in the Charles apartment. Between back rubs and sleeping pills, I worried about that. I didn't worry too much about the fact that William Charles, killer, gunman, burglar, was dying in the room directly above me. About midnight, Mapes showed up with a wheelchair.
There we are. Now, You all ready to go up and see what he has to say?
Yeah, sure, I guess so. I still have to finish my job.
Let's take it easy now.
All right. Hey, a week. Busy.
That won't last long. There. Now, here we go, baby.
It was the second time within a week I'd been in a hospital room with a dying person. The first one had been a young and beautiful woman who had been shot by the man who now lay dying of police bullets.
What'd they say?
You know what they say, Charles. You haven't got a prayer.
I didn't mean to kill Gloria. I didn't mean it at all. I want you to know that.
You took a lot of pains to do it. I was there, remember?
Yeah, I remember. Sorry. Been doing pretty good with those house jobs at Todd Place, another one in St. Louis. Doing all right. Enough to buy a nice car, live in a decent place, get around a little bit. Worked all alone. Met her. I liked her, wanted to marry her. I did. Really did.
You already had a wife.
You think I'm kidding? I gave her a mink coat, didn't I? Thought that it'd cinch. She didn't want to take it. Told me she was going to marry some other guy. Some guy she'd been married to before. I got mad. I came back that night, let her have it.
That all?
Yeah, that's all. That's it. That's it, mister. You take it or leave it.
How did you meet her?
Mutual friend.
What friend?
None of your business.
All right, this is my business. Where's the rest of the stuff?
What stuff?
The stuff you took from the Todd place. Where have you got it? Oh, what's funny?
You think I'd tell you that?
Oh, what's the difference now? Come on, what's the difference now?
Oh, it's a laugh, kiddo. You know what? I'd die before I tell you.
He died, and he didn't tell me. Not a word. Later, a private ambulance took me from police emergency hospital to my hotel room. 3 days after that, I was able to get back on my feet. I went right down to Mapes' office at headquarters.
How do you feel?
Better now.
Boy, you sure look lousy. Here, sit down, baby.
All right, thanks.
Should you be out of bed?
Yeah, sure.
You're lying and you know it.
I suppose so. Well, how's it going?
You mean have we located the rest of the stuff? No, not a lick of it. Funny guy, wasn't he?
He had his last laugh.
Well, you shouldn't be worrying about this stuff now. You ought to be taking care of yourself.
I am. I'm sitting here helping you worry.
I'm not worried about anything.
You're worried about the same thing I am. Where's all the rest of the Todd stuff?
It'll turn up somewhere.
In April of 1956, yours truly Johnny Dollar was shifted to 9:15 p.m. By the summer, CBS radio executives were looking to cut costs. Bob Bailey's daughter, Roberta, remembered that time.
I've been thinking for days of all the things that have happened. I think the one memory is the more I think of it, the sadder it is that type of radio had to leave us. That really, it was mind-challenging to listen. I remember listening to other shows. I had to sneak up at night to listen to Lights Out. It was a very exciting time, and I'm glad now that I was able to share it, and equally glad now that the next generation is able to hear these shows, that a person like you can bring them back for us. I'd like to see radio back again. I would give a lot of people an opportunity to get into the business who aren't pretty enough to get on the TV, so to speak. I was very sad when the demise of that kind of radio as we knew it.
CBS aired these 5-part episodes until November 2nd, 1956. The show moved to Sunday afternoons, where it enjoyed continuous airtime in a half-hour time slot. Bob Bailey became the actor most closely associated with the Dollar character, keeping the title role until November of 1960. It was then CBS decided to move all remaining dramatic productions, with the exception of Gunsmoke, to New York. Neither Jack Johnstone or Bob Bailey would move with the production. The last Hollywood episode was appropriately entitled The Empty Threat Matter. It aired on November 27, 1960. The trade papers made no mention of the production change.
Why, Mr. Dollar,
Hello, Mrs. Stromberg.
I read about what happened to you in the papers. I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry.
Oh, well, I'm better now.
Well, come in, please.
Thanks.
Say, you'd better sit down, Mr. Dollar. I'll get you a cup of coffee.
Do you have any bourbon?
Why, yes, I think
All right,
so.
I'll take that.
Well, all right. Is water okay?
Yeah, sure, fine.
Should you be out of bed, Mr. Dollar?
You know, everybody asks that. No, I shouldn't, and yet I should.
Well, here you are.
Oh, thanks. Well, here's cheers. Remember the night Gloria was shot?
Of course, very well.
You know, I've been worried about that night.
Huh?
Uh-huh. Remember I came over here and I told you I was in the insurance business and you said you'd have her call me when she came in?
Yes.
Well, I remember pretty clearly you said you'd have her call me when she came in, not if you saw her come in.
Yes, did I?
Uh-huh. You saw to it that she called me, Mrs. Stromberg. You also saw to it that she wasn't here to meet me when I got here. She was out there somewhere. Because by then you knew I was an insurance investigator.
I don't understand you, Mr. Dollar. What are you trying to say?
You sent her out so he could take care of her, and you were waiting in the hall for me.
Waiting for you? Why, no, I happened to see you, and I wondered
You wondered what kind of cock and bull story you could give me to get rid of me.
That's silly.
They sound that way. That's a good drink. But not so silly if you knew that coat she was wearing was stolen and that I was after it and her.
How would I possibly know that?
Because you introduced her to one of your friends one night and he went overboard for her, and eventually he gave her that little present?
Are you saying that I had anything to do with Gloria's trouble?
Yeah.
Why, that's silly.
Well, here's something sillier. A small-time burglar and thief lay on a hospital bed yesterday and wouldn't tell me how he met Gloria Tierney. Oh, he was a real gallant one, this bird. He killed an innocent girl because she was wearing a mink coat and might tell me who gave it to her.
Mr. Dollar,
He shot up 2 or 3 people in an apartment, including me. He got shot himself. He knew he was dying. But a simple thing like telling me how he met her wouldn't come out. He wouldn't tell me that for anything. Now, where could he meet her? Was he her kind? Did he go in the same circles? Did he? Nah. He was introduced by a mutual friend, Mrs. Stromberg. You, the manager of the apartment house.
No.
Something else he wouldn't tell me. What happened to the rest of the loot from the Todd burglary? 2 things he wouldn't tell me. He didn't have to when I sat down and thought it out. You've been working with him right along. You've been keeping all the stuff here.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Not so fantastic at all, Mrs. Stromberg, when you think that his wife, and she was a girl who'd do anything for money, they tell me, was willing to sell him to me for $2,500. $2,500 when there's still over $60,000 worth of loot from the Todd burglary lying around. She didn't know where it was, but you do, Mrs. Stromberg.
Well, if you say I do, I do. Now what?
Let's go down to Sergeant Mapes.
Oh, no,
I'd like a good excuse to use this.
Yes. I suppose you would. If I can't charm you or plead with you, can I buy you?
You could have prevented her death. You practically ordered it.
What is it you want?
You. Behind bars.
You're silly, but I'll go.
For a while, it did look silly. Mapes and his men searched the apartment house from top to bottom and found no trace of the Todd loot. That is, until they found a movable cement block in the basement. Well, the Todd matter ended with a 90% recovery of the stolen items. About $70,000 in dollars and cents. In lives, Gloria Tierney, 1 innocent bystander, and William Charles. For me, let's see. Expense account item 14, $162.30. Hotel and board while in New York. Item 15, $17.40. Airfare and incidentals back to Hartford. Item 18, $230. Miscellaneous. Expense account total, $1,095. Remarks, nil. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Remember, there'll be another intriguing story for you beginning next Monday night.
Next week, a music lesson on a priceless Amati violin. Music and mystery and danger. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by John Dawson, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Heard in this week's cast were Vivi Janis, Barbara Fuller, Shirley Mitchell, Lawrence Dobkin, Frank Gerstle, and Marvin Miller. Musical supervision by Amerigo Marino. Be sure to join us on Monday night, same time and station, for another exciting story of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. This is Roy Rowan speaking.
On December 4th, 1960, New York's version of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar took to the air starring Bob Reddick, son of New York radio legend Frank Reddick.
Johnny Dollar.
Toby Tedrick, Johnny, over here at Northeast Indemnity.
Well, good for you, Toby.
Now, what's that supposed to mean?
Just that I always have liked the nice big fees that company of yours hands out on cases. Just happens that I can use one of them right now. I've been running a little short.
And I don't get excited, Johnny.
Now, what is it this time? Murder? Arson? Embezzlement?
Well, it's...
Oh, come on, Toby. What is it?
Well, as a matter of fact, it's a robbery.
Well, fine. If I'm lucky, if I latch onto the loot, whatever it is, I'll collect my usual commission and be loaded again.
Johnny...
So tell me all. Now, what's the amount of the loss,
Well, that's the trouble. It's only $5,000.
$5,000?
Cash.
What, if it's only... Why, you're kidding me, I hope, huh?
Nope. Sorry.
Former show director Jack Johnstone continued to write scripts. But Bob Reddick had the unenviable task of following Bailey, who played Dollar in almost 500 episodes. Reddick was replaced after just 6 months, as of June 25, 1961, by the final Johnny Dollar, Mandel Kramer.
Johnny Dollar.
Johnny, this is George Hardy at Northeast Indemnity Association.
Yes, George.
Got a pencil and piece of paper?
Sure.
And write this down.
Go ahead.
130-07-0583.
Got it. So?
He wants to see you.
Who does?
130-07-0583 at State Prison.
Oh. Do you know his name, George?
No, but if it's who I think it is, well, Johnny, you just might find yourself going for the commission on $100,000.
Mandel, it's great to have you here, and this show is particularly important to us, the Johnny Dollar Show, because most of it was set in Hartford.
That's right. No, the insurance company. Of course, the show, the locale of the show is Hartford, because this is the insurance center of the country.
And you'd send in your expense account. That was the format of the show, as I recall.
Yeah, Johnny Dollar was an insurance company, private eye.
Yeah.
And the opening format of the show was the familiar telephone ring and Johnny Dollar. And then at the end of the show, he would submit his expense account for everything that had been incurred during the solving of this particular case. And it ended up with the yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. For the last year, I only wrote it. They moved production out of Hollywood entirely. I wrote the last year of it. As a matter of fact, the last Johnny Dollar and the last Suspense occurred on the same night, one followed the other. And the Johnny Dollar was written by Jack Johnstone, and the Suspense was written by Jonathan Bundy. Bundy was my wife's name. Quite honestly, I have to be honest about it, I thought New York production of those shows was pretty bad compared with our Hollywood standards during that last year when production of both those shows was done in New York.
For Bob Bailey, the end of Johnny Dollar meant the end of his radio career.
Yeah, it is painful. Those were very good times. And like I say, afterwards, when radio died, and I mean it died with a big bang, it just died out there in California. They tried to move it back to New York, and when they tried to convert to TV, so many of the radio personalities couldn't make the conversion. And until other jobs opened up, like the sponsor jobs, there were a lot of radio stars that just went completely downhill. Especially, like my father, had nothing to fall back on. He'd been an actor all his life. And by the time his radio show was over, he was almost 50. He weighed about 150 pounds, stood about 5'9.5", and they looked at him on television and said, "You're not Johnny Dollar." And he said, "But I am. I've been." And they said, No, we have to get a 6-foot-tall guy that weighs about 200 pounds to play the part. It was sad. It was a very sad time when TV just wiped it out.
There was a prejudice against radio actors on the part of television producers. When they came in, what I've read, at least, is that a lot of them were young whiz kids who came along and had a new toy, and they said, no, if you worked in radio now, you've got your own way of doing things, and this is TV. And actually, when you think that working in radio would give you a credential, back in the early 50s, it actually worked against you.
It did, because if you think of it, radio is an entirely different form of acting. You relied completely on the sound man, the sound mixer, for any sound effects that needed to be put in. Although you stood in front of the microphone, you would move your arms occasionally and act a little. All the acting was in the voice, in what came out from inside of you. You could wheel someone up there in a wheelchair, and he would project over the radio his voice, his emotion.
We are coming up to news. This is KNUS in Denver. It's 5 o'clock.